Last week, you had names like CeeDee Lamb, Lad McConkey, K. Dotton, Devon Achane, and Bo Nix go off in fantasy football and help people win their fantasy weeks. Well, in today's video, I'm giving you 10 names that will do the same in week 9, guys that will absolutely smash and win you your matchup. Starting off with Courtland Sutton at the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, a first-time appearance this year for Courtland Sutton on this series. He faces the Baltimore Ravens. By the way, best matchup for your fantasy wide receiver when you adjust for schedule. The Ravens secondary has been torched by wide receivers all season long. Davante Adams with over 110 yards and 26 points. Chase and T. Higgins both had some of their best days in fantasy. Terry McLaurin had 2 touchdowns. Cedric Tillman had 2 touchdowns, over 28 fantasy points. The Ravens defense in 2024, check this out, guys. They're giving up the most passing yards per game, and they are allowing the fewest rushing yards per game. The way to beat this team is through the air. The Ravens are actually tied for the second highest implied team point total on the week, meaning the Broncos are likely going to need to be throwing the ball from behind for most of the second half. So we could see Courtland Sutton with a lot of that sweet garbage time action. And Bo Nix, his quarterback, has thrown a touchdown in 4 out of the last 5 games, including a 3 passing touchdown day last week. Sutton is a fantastic flex. It's a perfect matchup. The Ravens are going to score points. The Broncos are going to have to throw the ball, and we know the secondary is pretty weak for Baltimore. I'm predicting at least 6 catches, 70 yards, and 15-plus PPR points. All right, the second player that I think is going to dominate this week is Aaron Jones versus the Colts. The Colts are a middle-of-the-pack matchup. My RB12 on the week, Aaron Jones is. But you can see Joe Mixon, he's faced him twice this year. Both times he's had over 23 fantasy points. Tank Bigsby had his best day as a pro, 2 touchdowns, over 25 fantasy points. Tony Pollard got into the end zone, over 117 all-purpose yards, almost 18 fantasy points. The Colts are top 5 in rushing yards allowed per game and in total yards allowed per game to opposing offenses. And Aaron Jones has scored over 17 PPR points in 4 out of his last 6 healthy games. If you remember week 5 versus the Jets, he left that game early with an injury. But again, in 4 out of the 6 healthy games, we've seen him hit over 17 PPR points. Unlike my man's hairline, I think he's going to have a complete performance in week number 9. I'm predicting at least 100 all-purpose yards and 16-plus PPR points. Okay, this takes me to my spicy, hot, bold take of the week. In week 9, with Joe Flacco under center, Josh Downs is going to go off against the Vikings. He'll finish with at least 6 receptions, 80-plus yards, and a touchdown, over 20 PPR points on Sunday Night Football for all of America to see. Again, the Vikings, his opponent, the second best matchup for your wide receiver in fantasy football right now. I've got him ranked as a top 20 wide receiver heading into the week. The Vikings gave up 27 points to Jaden Reed, 29 points to Garrett Wilson, over 25 to Amon-Ra, and Puka Nacua came back last week on a limited snap count and had over 18 PPR points. Similar to the Ravens, this is a pass funnel defense, right? Because they give up the 3rd most passing yards per game and allow the 3rd fewest rushing yards per game. So the way to beat this team is through the air. In my humble opinion, Josh Downs is an elite slot wide receiver, and the only thing missing was competent quarterback play for him to have a huge breakout. Guys, check this out. A-Rich's passing in 2024. If you look at quarterbacks who have had 50 dropbacks this year, there's 41 of them. He is last in completion percentage, last in adjusted completion percentage, which takes away drops and throwaways. He is 38th out of 41 in PFF passing grade, 37th out of 41 in turnover-worthy play percentage. Let's take it one step further. Shout out to the guys over on Pat McAfee. They brought up this stat. Anthony Richardson ranks 222nd in completion percentage amongst 225 quarterbacks with at least 250 dropbacks since the year 2000. Now, if you look at Josh Downs with Anthony Richardson versus Joe Flacco. With Joe Flacco, he's getting 10 targets per game, over 70 yards per game, and averaging over 19 PPR points. All of America gets to witness how good Josh Downs is this week. Again, 6 catches, 80 yards, a touchdown, and over 20 PPR points. All right, my quarterback streamer of the week is Kirko CHAINZ. That's right. Put some damn chains on. I want to be Kirk Thuggins for Halloween. But the guy is going to have a great game versus Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys are the 6th best matchup for your fantasy quarterback this year when you adjust for schedule. And this really is the perfect storm for your fantasy quarterback. Dallas is incompetent pretty much as a team. Every offense is starting hot against them, but then Dak keeps the Dallas Cowboys in the game, so you can't sit your starters. The Cowboys this year, Lamar Jackson had 26, Jared Goff had 25, and Brock Purdy had 26 against them just last week. They are top 7 in yards allowed to opposing offenses. This is the highest over-under of the week, so we should see a lot of fantasy points, and the Falcons are tied for the second highest implied team point total on the week. I'm predicting at least 250 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a top 8 finish for Kirk Cousins. All right, my 5th and 6th players, both New Orleans Saints, Kamara and Chris Olave at the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are the best matchup for your running back when you adjust for schedule, and the 7th best matchup for your wide receiver when you adjust for schedule. For Kamara, we've seen so many running backs go off against this defense. Chase Brown had his best day, over 23 points. DeAndre Swift had 20. Bijan Robinson had over 105 yards, 6.3 yards per carry, 25 fantasy points. And Tyler Algier had 20 in the same exact game. The last time Alvin Kamara played this team in week 1, he averaged over 5.5 yards per carry and had 22 fantasy points. Alvin is actually averaging over 110 all-purpose yards and 1 touchdown per game in his entire career versus the Carolina Panthers. He's an absolute smash start. Now, for Olave, we've seen so many wide receivers go off against this team as well. DJ Moore did his thing, 27 points, his best day on the entire year. Drake London had almost 20 points. Terry had 98 yards, no touchdown. And Sutton last week had over 100 yards, 17 PPR points. And in Olave's first game without Rashid Shaheed, he had season highs in target share with 36%, and air yardage with 57%. And he also saw 67% of the end zone targets. The Panthers defense is top 8 in passing yards allowed per game and top 2 in rushing yards, and total points allowed per game to opposing offenses. And the Saints are 7-point favorites. This team should absolutely dominate the Carolina Panthers on both sides of the ball and through the air, on the ground. Kamara, I think, has over 100 all-purpose yards and 18 plus PPR points. And I'd say Olave is at that 80 plus receiving yards, 17 plus PPR mark. All right. Moving on to my tight end play of the week. That is Cade Otton at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are the 6th best matchup for your tight end when you adjust for schedule. Cade Otton, my tight end 4 on the week. And we've seen a lot of tight ends go off against the Kansas City Chiefs. Remember back to week 1, Isaiah Likely had a career day over 26 points. Mike Gesicki in week 2, 16 points. Just recently, George Kittle had 92 yards against this team, over 15 PPR points. And without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, Cade Otton has turned into Timothy for fantasy. I mean, the guy has been different gravy. He had 29 fantasy points last week. But beyond the fantasy points, he actually had season highs or tied season highs in targets per route run, in target share, 24%, and in air yardage. He had 26% of the air yards, 75% of the end zone targets, which is crazy. I'm predicting at least 7 catches, 70 yards, and 15 plus PPR points. All right. A running back that I think is going to be a very good play this week is Tony Pollard versus the New England Patriots. I don't care if Drake May plays or not. Tony Pollard's going to go off. This is the 5th best matchup for your running back when you adjust for schedule. Jordan Mason had one of his best days, 160 total yards and 24 points against his defense. Joe Mixon only played like half the snaps, and he had 27 points. And then they put Dameon Pierce in there after him in garbage time, and Dameon Pierce averaged 9.5 yards per clip and almost 15 PPR points. Tank Bigsby had 2 touchdowns, almost 24 PPR points against this defense. The Patriots are tied for the lowest implied team point total on the week, which is very favorable for Tony Pollard because we could see him establish the run in the second half. I'm predicting at least 20 touches for Tony Pollard, 80 plus all-purpose yards, and 16 plus PPR points. A flex sneaky name here, Jakobi Meyers at the Bengals this week. The Bengals are the 6th best matchup for your fantasy wide receiver, and Terry McLaurin had 100 yards and a touchdown against them. Deontay Johnson had over 21 fantasy points. Zay Flowers had 111 receiving yards, and Devonta Smith just last week had over 20 PPR points. Some very impressive usage, by the way, for Jakobi Meyers since they trade away Davante Adams. If you remember, Davante Adams had a hamstring injury in week 3. And from week 4 onwards, Jakobi Meyers was the unquestioned wide receiver 1 for the Las Vegas Raiders. In that time span, he's had over a 30% target share in his last 3 games. Okay, he's had over 52% of the air yards in week 4. Has a route participation over 94%. They will be down in this game, and they will need Jakobi to get that sweet, sweet garbage time action. I'm saying 8 targets, 65 plus yards, and 15 plus PPR points. A great flex. All right, at our last name here, DeAndre Swift at the Arizona Cardinals, the 10th best matchup for your running backs. Name a running back who's played against Arizona. They've probably gone off. James Conner, Kyron Williams, David Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Devon Achane, all these guys had really great days. The Cardinals defense is top 8 in rushing yards allowed per game and total yards allowed per game. And in week 4, the Chicago Bears completely shifted their offensive identity from a pass to a run-focused team, and DeAndre Swift has been dominating since that time. Guys, from week 4 onwards, DeAndre Swift is 3rd in points per game amongst running backs. Only Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry have been ahead of him in that metric. I expect the Bears personally to lean on him again this week. I'm predicting at least 20 touches, 90 plus purpose yards, and 17 plus PPR points. So those are 10 guys that I think are going to absolutely dominate here in week number 9. Guys that will be the reason you win your week. Do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. And the last thing I'll say here just real quick, if you don't have a free account on the Flock Fantasy website, I can't encourage you more to do it. It's completely free when you use the promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, at signup, flockfantasy.com/land. When you do that, you'll get a free account and you'll be able to access things like the team analyzer for free, the trade calculator for free, expert consensus rankings for free. It's an incredible feature for you. And if you want to ask me a question at any time, check out the pinned comment. Through our website, you can ask us a question. So easy once you sync up your teams there. I appreciate you for watching. Go get a win in week number 9, and I'll see you guys very soon. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.